Okay, we're going to cover one thing from chapter 11 that I did not cover. Well, probably several things I didn't cover, but one that I wanted to particularly mention from our questions from chapter 11, and that is question number 9 that refers to verse 13 of chapter 11. The question is, the faith of these people that he's talking about in chapter 11 led them to confess something. What was this? What did they confess? Different translations use some different terms here, but
God's faithful.
He's faithful, and right, and right. And what did they confess about themselves?
Their belief in God.
Yes, that's correct.
Strangers and pilgrims.
Strangers and pilgrims on the earth. When he says, these all died in faith, he's talking about some that he's already mentioned and some that he is going to mention in the coming verses. These all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. Greeted them from afar. That's an interesting way of phrasing that to me. He said they hadn't received the promises, but they, in a way, greeted them as if they almost had received them because they were so sure that it was going to happen. And that, of course, hardly surprising when the chapter is about faith. That's what this is all about. Strangers and pilgrims. What are some other words that are used there?
Embrace them.
Embrace them, right? But I'm talking about characteristics of the people, other than calling those strangers or pilgrims. What are some of the other translations say?
Exiles.
Exiles, right? And I'm going to get to that one in a second, because that's my approved version, the ESV, that says exiles. Sojourners, foreigners, pilgrims, and so forth. Now, again, I don't want to get into all the nuances about the difference between a pilgrim and an exile, or a sojourner or a foreigner, whatever. But you get the point. He's saying these folks that he's talking about, this great host of people who lived their lives by faith and accomplished sometimes incredible things, feats of valor, and so forth. As Ronnie pointed out on Sunday, some of these people lived their lives by faith and met horrible ends to their lives and never were victorious in a great battle or something, but they were still commended for what they did. And they confessed, when it says they confessed that they were strangers, pilgrims, exiles, sojourners, what does that mean? They confessed that. What's another way of saying that?
They had no permanent ties.
Right. That's right. And they openly admitted it. They're not under any pretense of saying, well, doing this is important, but I've got a lot of things real important in my life too to deal with, so forth. And that goes along with some of what Barry was talking about tonight. Entering the final rest and what's really important. And that's what we're going to be talking about a lot in chapter 12 tonight. And the word exile that's used in the ESV, to me, is even a little bit stronger word than just talking about a pilgrim. Like a person goes on a pilgrimage to some holy land or something like that. And this is a great pilgrimage that we're going on, so forth. has really positive connotations to going to where we have this pilgrimage. The word exile has a much more negative connotation in general, does it not? So, what does it mean to confess that you're living in exile? And more important for us, what does it mean for us to say we're living in exile?
We wish we were somewhere else.
All right. That's right. Exile means you are in a place where you don't have you're not like the other people that are there, the citizens there. You're not one of those citizens. You're just there in exile. Now, exile can be forced or it can be voluntary, and we won't get into all the differences between forced and voluntary exile. But if you confess that you are a stranger and an exile on the earth, isn't that quite a step of our perspective on what life is all about, to say, I'm living in exile.
I think we have a song that expresses that idea.
Yeah. I've been humming that one most of the day. This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. And other songs that have similar sentiments there. But that mindset is something that, and as we go into chapter 12 right now, to me, this is where Hebrews is, I think, in a lot of ways a great study. But this where, in chapter 12, 11 and 12, especially is where it really can hit home to us, for us, it's one thing for these people to have said that they confessed that they were living in exile. But what would it mean for us to say, I'm living in exile, and have that perspective? That's a horse of a different color, I think. But one that surely we ought to seek to live by and have that kind of a mindset. Phil?
Well, being a stranger and a pilgrim, you have different values and you have different goals, and you don't live by earthly goods that you have on this earth. They don't mean anything. You have a spiritual house that's waiting for you.
That's right.
Dwelling.
Now, and you're right, and the things that are most important are different, are they not? Or shouldn't they be different for us? Now, that doesn't mean that we never give any thought to our plans for this life. And we could go to passages that talk about those kind of things. Here's my take on this. As Christians, our citizenship is not here on earth. This is not our permanent home. We're traveling through a land as we pass through to our eternal homeland. So we should not regard this world as our home, back to the song, nor should we allow attachments to be formed or arrangements to be made that would impede or hinder our journey toward our final home. One who is exiled in a land where he is not a citizen thinks much of his true country and home. Even though his time and attention may necessarily be occupied by the daily arrangements along the journey, his deepest thoughts and desires will be far away. And I need to work on myself, and I think we all need to work on ourselves to have that perspective. Our deepest thoughts and desires are far away. And then, that's why he says, therefore, chapter 12, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Yet again, we have a thought being introduced by therefore, based on all that he's talked about in chapter 11, and these people who live their lives by faith. And they embraced the promises, greeted them from afar, even though they still hadn't actually received them. But he said, they are there. And what are they doing? That's question one. What is meant by we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses? What do you think that means?
Cheering us on. Like, you can do it. We made it. You can do it.
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. I think they are cheering us on. And the obvious figure here is to a race that's being run. He says that, and we got a great cloud of witnesses. Think about all the people that he mentioned in chapter 11, compounded by thousands more that are witnessing what we're doing or what we're trying to do, and they're cheering us on. Well, to me, that's a fantastic thought. Now, I don't think that necessarily means that the people who've gone on before are consciously watching every step that I take or that you take or whatever. I think it's just obviously a figurative way of expressing this. But he said, they're in your corner. They're in my corner. They want us to succeed. And it's a great cloud of witnesses. It reminds me in Revelation chapter 5, when he talks about the throne scene and talks about the angels there. And he talks about 10,000 times 10,000 angels singing in a loud voice and praising God. Now, last time I checked my math, that's 100 million. And he's going to be talking here in just a minute about a company of angels. So they're cheering us on, wanting to be successful. And so in view of that, question 2, to be able to run our race with endurance, what should we do?
Number one thing is to fix our eyes on Jesus.
I wonder who's going to hold up the book. That's it. I mean, that's the study. But even before that, he says what?
You got to put away the things that are hindering you.
That's right. Great cloud of witnesses. Let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. What does that bring to mind, that language? Sin that clings so closely. Why does he say it that way?
Well, because we're in our flesh, we still live in our flesh, and our fleshly desires and all of that, I mean, we're still in that.
Yeah. And if sin is clinging closely to us, what impact would it have on us in this race?
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction. Wouldn't it bog us down? Wouldn't it make it more difficult for us to run the race? He says, lay aside every weight. Okay, we're going to run a race, and so I'm getting ready to run the race, and just before start, I'm going to get 50 extra pounds and carry it with me. Lay aside every weight, things that get in the way, that bog us down, that make it more difficult. Like we said earlier, the things about this life that consume us so much that we forget about what the true goal is and start worrying more about temporal, earthly things than the spiritual things. He said, you got to get rid of that. Now, admittedly, that's easier said than done, is it not? But what makes it easier to do is, as we said a minute ago, who we're focusing on. Fixing our eyes on Jesus. The ESV and some others say looking unto Jesus. Several say fixing our eyes on Jesus or focusing on Jesus. And I like that way of characterizing it because it doesn't mean you just glance over every once in a while. Laser focused. Not on the people that are cheering us on, although that's great, but the one that's across the finish line that's already done it all. And that's what Hebrews is all about, is fixing our eyes on Jesus and being focused on Him. And when it says, well, let's go ahead and take question 4. Jesus is called the author and finisher of our faith. What are some other words that are used other than author and finisher of our faith?
Founder and perfecter.
Founder and perfecter. Perfecter, yep. What else?
Pioneer.
Pioneer, right? All right. And I made the comment about these are similar to terms used at least 4 times in Revelation to describe Jesus, such as I am the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Other things that show Jesus is he's not just somebody that was kind of an afterthought that came in and said, well, I think I'm going to play a part in this too. He is the one that begins it and the one that perfects it. And by perfects it, I think he's talking about not so much it being a perfect, infallible thing, but he's talking about something that is complete. And a lot of times in Scripture, perfection is talked about being complete. And if you did some reading about this, you probably have seen that in the original, talking about when he says, founder and perfecter of our faith, the word our is not in the original. It's the founder and perfecter of faith. Jesus is what it's all about. And he explains that some by what he says following. Who is referring to Jesus, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Do you think that Jesus showed what faith is all about by submitting absolutely, finally, all the way to the ignominious, shameful, degrading death on the cross? That was so awful. He's the beginning and the end of faith, and we focus on him. And that's what it's all about. And he, yes, others are cheering us on, this great cloud of witnesses, but he is showing there as we fix our eyes on him across the finish line that he's already done it. And the way is there. All we have to do is keep our focus and not let things bog us down and get us distracted. Questions, comments? Brad?
I have about 1,000. I'm going to just do 2.
Oh, we'll let you do 2.
Come to me, all you know, my burden is light, my yoke is easy. That's a lot. That's the opposite of running with the burden and the yoke of sin. That's my first comment. We've already talked about that in
Yeah.
conference. But what's interesting out of all this is in chapter 11, verse 1, the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Noah, in verse 7, is the only verse that says, or he hadn't seen these things. But if you look at chapter 11, verse 6, those who seek him. Verse 13, they died in faith having seen them. Verse 27, seeing him who is unseen. And then verse 2, fixing your eyes on Jesus. So I think that's just beautiful, deep, poetic, and there's a sense of irony. These things we can't see, but all these heroes of faith, they saw something.
Right, yeah.
When you're running this race,
Yeah.
he's using the metaphor of using your eyes. I don't know, it's very striking.
Well, it is. And there are striking metaphorical images there about what faith will do.
Yeah.
And allows us to think about things that are far away, that we've never seen, but as he said, and we've talked about this already, but we can greet them from afar. Those people under the old covenant that he mentioned did, but we do it as well. Now we've received promises already to some extent, but we haven't received the final rest, have we, Barry? That final rest that we're looking forward to enter, but we can greet it from a distance and be absolutely confident that it's there waiting on us, just like Paul was when he talked about what was laid up for him at the end.
David?
Yes.
I remember
Reed.
doing a word study on that word that's translated author. And it shows up 4 times in the Bible, twice in Hebrews, twice in Acts. That's why a lot of people think Luke wrote Hebrews, a sermon that Paul wrote, maybe, or that he preached. But baked into that cake of using this word author is that there was no way for salvation to be realized unless this path was cut by this person, Jesus.
Right.
If this new story was written, was
Right.
authored. And it was non-trivial because the same words that are used here, author and perfecter, it was fitting for him, God, in chapter 2, verse 10, to perfect the author through sufferings.
Right.
And so that's what is baked into that cake here in saying author and perfecter,
Yeah.
is all the things that Jesus did.
Yeah.
There was no way for
That's
us
right.
to realize salvation.
Yeah.
And he cut through the weeds. I mean, that's obviously like a demeaning analogy because you just can't, there was no way to get through that mountain.
Yeah, you're exactly right. God's way, even in the garden when he said, can it be another way? And the answer was no. And he, being a man, wished that there would be another way, but there was not another way. And when it says, you're right, that for him to be the author, the pioneer, the trailblazer that makes that happen, it had to be this way. When it says, who for the joy that was set before him, what joy?
Gain salvation.
Right. But the joy, what was the joy set before Jesus?
Bringing many sons to glory.
Right. And to be the exalted one. When Peter on the day of Pentecost says, let all the house of Israel know for sure that this same Jesus whom you've crucified has been made both what? Lord and Christ. He endured horrible things, despising and shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Now, it's up to us. Tim.
As we study chapter 11, and these first few verses of chapter 12, you see it over and over again. Faith is obedience. Jesus was obedient. All these people in the hall of faith were obedient. Let's don't ever downplay obedience like we hear people do today. I read a guy today that said, you are saved by grace through faith. not by obedience. I said, that's a contradiction. You are saved by grace through obedience.
Yeah.
It is a gift of God.
He's reading out of a different translation. Yeah.
But men do downplay obedience.
Yes, they do.
If we're not going to do it ourselves.
And Jesus became obedient even to death on the cross. When it says, though he were a son, yet learned he what? Obedience by the things that he suffered. And he's the trailblazer. He's the one that showed us what faith is all about, and gives us the way to get to the Father. The way. Sandy.
When he's talking about, we were talking about, Christ being the author, as I do tend to do in the children's version, international version of Hebrews 12:2. I love the way it put it, that it said, let us look only to Jesus. He is the one who began our faith. He wrote the book. He wrote.
Yeah.
He is what
Yeah.
our faith, without Jesus, it would not be the same type of faith.
Yeah.
It would not be
Well,
the same.
right. It wouldn't. And we.
Wouldn't be.
That's right. It would be meaningless, and we've talked about that some before, like from 1 Corinthians 15, just talking about his resurrection. Not only the crucifixion, but if he wasn't raised, let's all just go home, because we're wasting our time. He said, if Christ is not raised. It had to be the way the Lord intended it to be. And he is the one that set the path for us, and we focus on him. Yes, from time to time we're distracted by things that come along here. And, I don't want to overstate the case. It's not like we go off and live on a mountaintop somewhere and never have any contact with anybody anymore, just waiting for the Lord's return. But we get way too hung up sometimes in our cares about what's happening around us. We're not citizens here. We're living in exile, and it helps me to think of it that way. All right, let's question 6, 7, and 8 are talking about striving about certain things and about enduring certain things. What does he say that we're striving against? That's an easy one. Striving against sin. Question 7, what should be our attitude toward the chastening, or other words used, discipline, we face from time to time?
Tell them not to be discouraged.
Okay, not to be discouraged. And also, it says, some of the translations say, do not take lightly the chastening or discipline. Wherever it is. Now, who's doing this chastening? A little bit louder. God. What does that mean? And what does that have to do with what he's talking about here? Isn't he talking here about the race that we're running and how to get from where we are to where we want to be, and what to focus on, what not to focus on, so forth. And then in the midst of all this, he talks about enduring or putting up with chastening or discipline. 25 words or less. What is all that about? What point is he making? Again, who's the source of this chastening or this discipline? God. Why?
He's our Father. He loves us.
Okay, there you go. He's our Father. He loves us. So He allows or provides that certain things happen that do what? For us or to us.
Disciplines.
Disciplines us.
Say again?
Disciplines.
They discipline us. What does discipline do for a child?
It corrects your behavior.
Right,
Change.
right. Changes. Do better. Now, I don't have all the answers to this one at all, but we need to do some deep studying about this. God is said, because He loves us and is our Father, that He does certain things that can be characterized as us receiving chastening or discipline. And He said, when you receive that chastening or discipline, that feels good, right? No, never. That's the point that I need to understand, is that when things happen in my life sometimes and things aren't going so great, and I'm saying, why is this happening to me? Maybe I need to wake up and realize that my Father is showing me some things that need to wake me up and help me to understand that I've gotten off track a little bit. And he says, he talks about earthly fathers. Besides this, verse 9, we have earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and lived? For they disciplined us for a short time as it seemed best to them. But He disciplines us for what? Our good. He never makes a mistake, does He? He didn't say, well, I guess I was a little bit harsh there. God's always going to discipline in a way that's for our good. Now, we may not understand it at the time, but when He says, later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. In the long run, we're better off if we sit up and take notice and realize that God is trying to get a message through my thick skull to help me to understand some things, so that later on the path can be maybe not quite so rough, as my thoughts are. Any final thoughts about that? Somebody wrap it up.
I can't in 25 verses. Go to someone else.
David, I was going to say right quick, our daily struggle against sin is discipline in itself. Like, that's part of it. I mean, God, we don't know, we don't have the mind of God, so we don't understand, specific things He might do to discipline us. But our striving against sin on a daily basis is a part of that, for sure.
Yeah, and it requires quite an effort sometimes, doesn't it? Okay, Sunday morning, the plan is to finish up a couple of thoughts here from chapter 12 about what we are looking forward to. The heading in my Bible toward the beginning of verse 18 is a kingdom that cannot be shaken. What a wonderful thought, and what a contrast with the terrifying things that happened at Mount Sinai and all the fear that they lived in and dread and so forth. And he said, look at what we're looking forward to, and what a wonderful thing that is. We're going to look at that briefly and then try to cover the final chapter, chapter 13, on Sunday morning. Thank you for your good comments.